Okay. Okay,
Good
so not
morning.
everyone's here yet, but I just wanted to do a quick start intro. And we're going to record this for anyone who missed it or who missed the beginning. I am Jen Mitchell with Jen Mitchell Travel, and we are hosting a trip to Kenya next year. We are going to be taking a small group of 12 people with us in June. And in order to, I think, best go through the details of the itinerary, we have Coda with Travel Beyond, who is working on this trip for us here, to kind of go through day by day and explain where we're going, talk about the different lodges and the logistics and what it looks like on safari on a day-to-day basis, and then leave some time for questions and answers. So what I'll do is I will leave it to Coda, and he will do share his screen with us so you can see the presentation with all the lovely photographs and videos. And that way you can have a look at that as well. If you want to go back and rewatch it, we will send that off later, and we'll also send a hard copy of the itinerary after the Zoom presentation so that you can look at it at home and share it with whomever you want to travel with on this trip. But we hope that some of you join us on this trip to Kenya, as it will be fabulous. We have really taken care to pick the best properties that we think that everyone will love. And I'll leave it with you, Coda.
Great. Thanks so much, Jen, and thanks everyone for coming this morning. I am a bit of a caveman when it comes to text, so please, if someone can give me a thumbs up, if you can see my screen, I would appreciate it. Sure. Thank you, Jen. All right, so as Jen mentioned, she will be hosting a trip to Kenya in June of 24, not 23. I apologize for the typo. But Kenya is a wonderful destination to visit in the month of June, and I'll talk a little bit about what that looks and feels like. But just a little bit of background on me first. I've been in the safari industry for 22 years. Now I look really young, and it probably feels impossible for me to have been working in one industry for 22, but that is the case. I started out as a camp hand, working overland trips across Southern Africa. I eventually ended up leading my own groups, and then moved over to doing logistics and operations for various safari companies. And I've been with my current employer, tour operator and DMC, or destination management company, for the past, going over a little over 12 years. So lots of experience, not only doing logistics and operations, but also working in the field. So I can talk to you in depth about what these destinations look and feel like, what are the pros and cons of going during certain times of the year, and hopefully we can cover a little bit of that today.
Sounds good.
Yep. So this is the company that I work for. And again, we work in partnership with Jen to provide on-the-ground logistics for African safaris. And this is a little bit about what we do. And I think it's very easy to, sort of get into doing sort of standardized milk run or cookie cutter trips, but we really try to do our best to immerse our clients into the natural environment that they're traveling in, get them away from sort of the mass tourism market destinations, and really try to integrate ourselves into the destinations in which we're traveling, and trying to do that responsibly too, right? So I'll talk about what responsibility looks like in a moment. And I thought I'd kick this off with a cute cheetah cub picture. Cheetah cubs are quite unique, actually. I don't know if you can see so well in this picture, but they've got a little bit of a silver lining on their back, and that's to make them actually look like honey badgers, who have a reputation for being notoriously feisty. So when predators like lions or hyenas or jackals spot a baby cheetah off in the distance, they're commonly mistaken for honey badgers. So that's why they've got that silver sort of look on their back. And just to toot our own horn a little bit, last year we were nominated or voted the world's best tour operator in travel and leisure. And we have been on the top 10 list for 5 years running. So we are a reputable tour operator, and we've been in business for over 40 years. And as I mentioned to you before, we try to get people immersed into the natural environment. These are some of the pictures and imageries taken from the camps and destinations in which you'll be traveling. And I think one of the key distinctions that I want to mention off the bat before we take a deeper dive is that there's 2 ways of looking at how to go on. And the first one is sort of the mass market, the more commercialized version, which will be your national parks and game reserves. And national parks and game reserves depend on volume tourism to generate revenue through park fees. So essentially, it's mass market. And when you have something that's mass market, you've got some caveats that are in place. First of all, it can be crowded, especially in a country like Kenya. It's not uncommon. So you see that second cheetah photo with that one vintage vehicle. If you're in a national park, it's not uncommon to see like over a dozen vehicles or even 2 or 3 dozen vehicles around one animal sighting. Secondly, aside from it being crowded, is that to keep the masses safe, they have to have a lot of sort of rules and regulations in place to keep everyone safe, to include things like no walking safaris, no equestrian safaris, like the picture that you see on the bottom left, no night drives in search for nocturnal species or even diurnal ones on the hunt, and no off-roading for environmental sensitivity reasons. So there's a lot of limitations when you're in national parks. Now, Jen and I have planned a trip that is not within national parks, but in private conservancies. And these are private land that's leased from the local tribal communities like the Maasai or the Samburu people that you see in the top left-hand corner picture. So what happens when you lease land for photographic safari ventures through local tribal communities is that one, the tribal or the cultural component becomes very much integrated into your safari experience. And two, there's a lot of restrictions that are lifted, right? Because you're on private land, you can get out of the vehicle and walk. If you see a rhino that's 100 yards off the road, you can go drive up right next to that rhino. If you want to go for a night drive and look for lions on the hunt, you can do that. And then the biggest benefit of all, in my opinion, is that you can enjoy this wilderness space without feeling claustrophobic or being surrounded by a bunch of other vehicles. Right, so that's the entire trip. The 3 different ecosystems that we're visiting are in key wildlife corridors, oftentimes adjacent to or bordering national parks, but on private land. So you have all the benefits of the amazing wildlife that you would find in national parks, but with the exclusivity and also the flexibility in activities. Right. So a day on safari, I don't know how many of you have been on safari before, but for those of you who have not been on safari, it is, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? So usually mornings are very, very early. It's even earlier than you're waking up before sunrise. This time of the year in winter, I would imagine that you're waking up in camp around 5:30. Okay, a little butler service will come to your door with tea and coffee, biscuits, cookies, etc. for a nice wake-up call. And then about 30 minutes thereafter, someone will come and get you at your tent, and you will walk over to the carport or the main lounge area and board your vehicle for your activity. And you will stay out, whether in a vehicle or on foot or on horseback or whatever activity you choose, for a couple of hours, right? So you leave around 6, come back maybe around 10, 10:30, and then the siesta time starts. So you'll be fed first, have a big brunch spread, whether it's in the field like the picture shown here or back in camp. And then you'll have a couple of hours just to relax in camp. And these camps, most of them have swimming pools. Oftentimes wildlife come through camp, so you can do a little bit of armchair safari like this couple is doing here. There's also oftentimes libraries and common spaces in which you can just hang out and read a book, socialize with other guests that are in camp, or just go back to your room, relax, and take a snooze. And then sometime around 4:30, you'll go back to the main lounge area. It's quite colonial and British, but they do a pretty ornate and extravagant high tea ceremony. So you'll have lots of cakes and biscuits and scones and teas and coffees. And again, you'll enjoy that for about 30 minutes before you board your vehicle or any other activity set and go off. And the afternoon activity can again last for a couple of hours. And then you're in camp 7:30, 8:30 time frame, just in time for supper. Usually people will just rock up to dinner wearing exactly what they've worn on game drive, and that's perfectly acceptable. On certain evenings, if there is a beautiful sunset or a clear sky, just before coming, they will do what's called sundowners. So instead of doing pre-drink dinners in camp, they will do it out in the field. And it's an African tradition. You will likely do it once per camp, but it just sort of depends on, what the conditions are. But you'll get to enjoy some beautiful sundowners out in the field when you're on safari. And then dinners, it just depends. Oftentimes when you're in camp for 3 nights, which is what you're doing on this particular itinerary, you're spending 3 nights in 3 different camps. They'll oftentimes choose different dining venues. So sometimes you're in the main dining room. Sometimes they'll do it out in the field. Sometimes they have what's called a boma, which is sort of a traditional Maasai dwelling, and you'll have supper inside of a boma. But it's always beautiful. It's always al fresco. The meals are always fresh and wholesome. They can accommodate for any dietary requirements, whether it be vegetarian, vegan, any of that, even critical food allergies. If someone's got celiac or any anaphylactic reactions to certain foods, you'll have a chance to insert that information into our booking forms, and we will make sure that we can accommodate any dietary requirements. But traditionally speaking, most meals are Western. Typically, maybe one night in camp at each one of these camps, they might do quote unquote a traditional meal, which is typically like stewed meats and vegetables accompanied by ugali, which is like a corn maize meal. So you'll have an opportunity to try some local flavors in addition to things that you're more familiar with. Right. The places that you're visiting, I'll get into this in a second, but classic African wildlife viewing. I don't know if any of you have heard the term the Big Five before, but the Big Five will be present on this trip. The chances of you seeing the Big Five are quite good. And the Big Five will comprise of the elephant, leopard, lion, Cape buffalo, and rhino. Okay. And referred to as the Big Five, not only because they're big, but because they are the 5 most dangerous animals to hunt, which we won't be doing on this trip, by the way. So the trip will commence on June 4th. One of our representatives will meet you jet side, regardless of whether you arrive as a group or whether you arrive individually. We'll give you diplomat service through the airport. You'll be whisked away, and what takes several hours to get through the airport will take you 5 to 15 minutes. And then in the arrivals hall, met by our driver, and he or she will take you to the neighborhood of Karen, which is about 30 minutes outside of downtown Nairobi, where you will stay for 2 nights. Okay, and we've got some activities planned for you there. Some of you might have security and safety questions and concerns. We usually address that by telling people that Nairobi does have its share of petty crime and some violent crime as well, just like any other major metropolitan city here in the US. But we take you away from that city environment and take you to a leafy green suburb where there's security and crime really isn't an issue. So that's how we address crime in Nairobi. It's much like, going to Chicago or DC, we take you away from the political hotspots and take you out into quote unquote the countryside. This is the Hemingway's Hotel in Nairobi, arguably Nairobi's finest. You will spend 2 nights here. And all the amenities of a luxury 5-star hotel here in the States. Beautiful, spacious rooms, fast Wi-Fi, believe it or not, it does exist in Kenya. Amazing food and quick access to some key sites, right, that we'll be visiting. And one of the key sites that we'll be visiting is the Daphne Sheldrick Elephant Orphanage. We've got a visit planned for you there, where you will get an experience to see some of the baby elephant orphans that have been taken in, and see how they are cared for before they're reintroduced back into the wild. And it does tell a beautiful and really compelling story about, the challenges that certain species face in modern day Africa, and how we are able to contribute to their conservation efforts. There is also the Giraffe Center, which you see a picture of on the bottom right-hand corner. The Giraffe Center also protects critically endangered subspecies of giraffes, and you have an opportunity to interact and feed them there. And then my favorite visit is a place called the Kazuri Beads. And what Kazuri Beads does, there's a picture of some of the goods that are sold at Kazuri Beads, is that they take, employ women from battered women's shelters in Nairobi and also single mothers to give them financial independence. And it's a remarkable way of empowering women in Kenya to have to live lives for themselves and not depend on men to become or to be the breadwinners of the household. So it's a remarkable organization, and they practice traditional beading work and things that you can bring home to your friends and family. Okay. So the first safari destination that you will visit is called Opejata, or affectionately known as Opej. And Opej is due north of Nairobi. And these are the aircrafts that we'll be using to access Opej. They are referred to as the workhorse of Africa. They're the Cessna Grand Caravans, or technically known as the C208B. And you'll be flying in 2 private aircrafts. So we've got 2 of them at your disposal during your safari, and they will take you from destination to destination for maximum efficiency. And also, you know, if you want to take in some aerial perspective of the land beneath, it's not just a logistical connection. We can use this as a means for activity, so you can take some scenic flights as well. And the first camp that we're visiting is called Tambabari. It is a new camp that opened 2 years ago. And Tambabari is in the heart of Opej. And what makes Opej unique is that it's one of the very few rhino conservancies in Africa, really. Rhinos are critically endangered and poached for their horn. So organizations like Opej are really important in that they protect these critically endangered species. Both the black and white rhino do exist here. But what makes Opej unique of any other rhino conservation is that they are home to the last 2 remaining northern white rhinos on the planet. Okay, and the northern white rhinos are in this little enclosure. Unfortunately, they have to have 24-hour-a-day monitoring, but they are owned by a zoo in the Czech Republic and housed at Opej. And you'll get a chance to go and meet those last 2 northern white rhinos if you wish to do so. And, you know, they are so docile. They have been so habituated. They have to be, because they're the last 2. There's constant monitoring that you can actually get out of the vehicle and put your hand on them, spend time with them, and be with the last 2, again, remaining northern white rhinos on the planet. So quite a remarkable experience. You'll see, you know, tremendous big cat viewing here, really productive for lion, also good area for cheetah. They've got lion tracking here, which you can do with the research group. They've got walking safaris. They've got cycling safaris or mountain biking if you wish to do that. This picture is actually quite important, that lion picture. You'll see these acacia plants that are in the foreground, and they're known as whistling acacia trees. And you'll learn all about them there and why they're important to the biome and the ecosystem. But one of the things that you have to consider is that if you want to go out of the vehicle and go on a walking safari, you might be able to see very faintly in this picture that there's like these 3-inch indestructible thorns that are attached to these plants. And when they fall on the ground and you step on them, they can puncture the bottom of your shoe. So we'll talk about this during the pre-trip call when you're getting ready to depart. But if you want to go on walking safaris, you got to be considerate of the environment around you. So you've got to wear proper hiking shoes. But wonderful, wonderful areas to go on walking safaris. And here's Fatima, one of the last 2 remaining northern white rhinos. And the ranger and the caregiver will tell you what makes them unique compared to the standard sub-Saharan white rhinos. And we'll give you a whole lecture on that. So it becomes an amazing learning experience. Okay. From Opej, you will take your private aircraft and go to an area known as Lewa Conservancy, or Lewa Wildlife Conservancy. And Lewa is my favorite conservancy in Kenya. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is that there is an amazing history to be told here. So this is actually the original rhino conservancy. Okay, and what's really cool about this conservancy in particular is that they've got some unique species here that you won't see elsewhere. Subspecies of giraffes called the reticulated, the zebra known as the grevy's, the ostrich known as the Somali, some other oddities like gerenux, etc. I rattle these names off to you. You won't know the difference now, but when you get there, you'll be able to see the Maasai giraffe next to the reticulated and notice the physiological differences between the two. And this is one of the very few places in Africa where you have the opportunity to do so. Okay, this place that we've chosen for you, Lewa Wilderness, is not a tented camp, but it's a lodge. And Lewa Wilderness is owned by the Craig family, who founded the Lewa Conservancy. And oftentimes, Ian and Will, the two founders of the Conservancy, are in camp. We can't guarantee that they'll be there, but oftentimes they are, and they'll host you for dinner. They'll tell you stories about what it took to build this conservancy and what it takes to protect rhinos in modern-day Africa. So there's an amazing sense of history here, great hosting, great guiding, lots of activities to include horseback riding safaris, camelback riding safaris, forest visits, community visits. What else am I missing here? If I mentioned walking safaris. So there's lots of things to keep you engaged while you are here. And there is also one very unique activity that you can do here, which is visiting the park headquarters. And you can get an idea of what it takes to run such a massive conservation operation. So it's almost like a military level operations in which they've got geothermal tracking to make sure that poachers aren't coming in. They've got certain animals that are collared to follow their movement. We had a ex-Navy SEAL visit this particular headquarters facility and came back and told us that this was in line with some of the equipment that, the military in the US are using to protect rhinos. So it's a huge operation. And then immediately after doing that experience, you can go out with a canine unit and they'll do a demonstration on how the canines are used, bloodhounds are used to find poachers that may have come into the conservancy. So really cool activity to do. And here are some pictures of the activities that are on offer. That giraffe is a reticulated giraffe. So that's one of the more rare species that you'll see on this trip. And then from Lewa, you will fly in your private aircraft to the Masai Mara. And you will stay not in the Masai Mara National Reserve, but you'll stay in a private conservancy called Olderkesi, which is right adjacent to the Masai Mara National Reserve. And this is one of the most beautiful tented camps in the whole of the Masai Mara. It's a place called Cotter's 1920s. It harkens back to a time in which this decor was in fashion. This is referring back to the colonial era. It's owned by the Cotter's family, and Calvin Cotter, the current owner, is one of the very few gold-rated guides in all of Kenya. There is maybe about 20 quote-unquote gold-rated guides in the country. The rest are silver and bronze. So you'll have some of the best guiding here at Cotter's 1920s and some of the most beautiful accommodations. And here, if you are lucky, certain times or certain years, I should say, the Great Migration will be arriving into the Masai Mara. June is a little bit early, but some years they can be in the Masai Mara in June. But even if the Great Migration is not there, there's still lots and lots of resident wildlife to be found here that don't migrate, right? So this is the most prolific area for wildlife viewing during your entire stay. Quite literally, animals falling out of trees. You'll spend more time looking at animals than time without. And also one of the best places in the whole of Africa to see cheetah, right? So it's big open savannas. When you think about what Africa looks like in your mind's eye, these big rolling hills, open grasslands, acacia trees, this is classic Africa. Okay. So at Cotter's, you've got game drives, you've got walking safaris. You can even go on horseback if you wish to do so here, but I don't recommend it. Lewa and Old Pejeta is much better for horseback riding safaris. For a supplemental extra, you can even go on an e-bike if you want to go on an e-bike mountain biking tour. There's lots of activities here to keep you engaged as well. So thanks for your time. That's the trip in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions, comments, and/or concerns. Jen also has a copy of a a hyperlink or a link to an online itinerary that we can share with you if she hasn't already. And that will include the day-to-day itinerary, hyperlinks to accommodations, all the activities that are on offer, how the logistics work, and also very importantly, the pricing for the trip is also embedded into that email. So.
Yep. So basically after the Zoom, I'm going to go ahead and send out the email with the itinerary link and all the pricing details and the day-to-day. So I will be sending that out shortly. And if you want to book this trip, I recommend that you jump on it because it is limited to 12 people, 6 couples, singles. We're open to singles as well. I think we have 1 single already committing. So just let me know. It is first come, first serve on accommodations because they're not all exactly the same as well. So the first to book will get the best in terms of accommodations, although they're all lovely. And if you have any questions, we're going to open it up, either the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask any questions that you have.
Jen, this is Ronnie.
Hi.
How about getting there? Are we on our own to do that?
No, I'll help you with that. So we'll work on your flights. As soon as those open up, we'll go ahead and help you with that.
Okay. Because I generally, in the past, when I've done this, I've used points to get there.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Any other questions?
Jen,
I
this
love
is
the idea that it's not, that it's all private conservancies. You know, I don't like the national parks for the reasons that you said, Coda.
Thank you, Ronnie. I feel the same way too, and I don't like to tell people one is better than the other. They're just simply different. But my preference too is the private conservancies.
And we also chose to do 3 nights in each of the properties to give you more time to do a lot of activities that they offer, as well as some downtime. Because sometimes it's nice. The game drives could be tiring, and sometimes it's nice to be able to just lay by the pool or have a spa treatment and read a book, just relax a little bit. And if you're doing 1 or 2 nights at a time, it feels a little bit more rushed.
I like the 3 nights. That's what I've always done, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
If I'm going all that way, I want to see stuff, you know?
Yeah. You may not see something one day and it gives you 2 more days to have the opportunity to see what you're looking for there.
And laundry.
Yeah. Any other questions? And of course, you can reach out to me directly if you have any specific questions that you want to speak with me one-on-one regarding this trip. I'd be happy to answer those. I am here in the office. You can email me or you can call me. And if there's no other questions, we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Coda, so much for taking the time to go over this trip with us in detail. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye,
Thank you.
Coda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, we'll chat, Jen.
Okay.